send them a message.
Very nice. Welcome to the group study of practical occultism put on by the WFYT. We can begin with a couple of minutes of silence. We come to the first slides here. I can go ahead and read this first one. 36. There are 4 names of the various kinds of esoteric knowledge or sciences given. Even in the exoteric Puranas, there's this first one of Yajna Vidya knowledge. The Yajna says the Brahmins exists from eternity, for it proceeded forth from the Supreme One, in whom it lay dormant from no beginning. The Yajna exists as an invisible thing at all times. It is like the latent power of electricity in an electrifying machine, requiring only the operation of a suitable apparatus in order to be elicited. I think her intent here was that there's 4 kinds of occult knowledge. And then in the next few slides, she just talks about these 4.
And is this related with the what they say, the 4 approaches of yoga, or is not back? Well, we will see that, but I haven't gone through the next chapters.
Yeah, I think it's something different.
Okay.
But to be honest, I'm not too familiar with the 4 aspects of yoga.
They talk about the knowledge, the jnana yoga. They talk about the bhakti, the devotional, the karma, the action, and the latest, which would be the I always forget the fourth, which, the mystic. Yes, exactly. The mystic. And they have this I just don't know if it may be there may be like a parallelism, you know.
It could be.
But for me, when she's talking about this as electricity and being underlying everything, it feels on a way as if it's also as if it's talking about information, you know, in the sense of something which is underlying the different aspects which are underlying the whole reality, and it feels not just a wisdom of something that you learned and you acquire outwardly, but it feels as if you would be able to connect to that underlying existing label, no? Or sorry, underlying existing net, to say it in a way of this information. No?
Yeah, that makes sense. Something deeper than intellect. Should I go to the next slide? I think
Yes,
the next slide's about these. Okay. It's up to you if you wanted to read them, or I could too.
I can go. 1.2. It is supposed to extend from the Avanilla or sacrificial fire to the heavens, forming a bridge or ladder by means of which the sacrificer can communicate with the world of gods and spirits, and even ascend when alive to their abodes. This jhana is again one of the forms of the Akasha, and the mystic word calling it onto existence and pronounced mentally by the initiated priest is the lost word receiving impulse through willpower of the occult powers awakened in nature by the performance of certain religious ceremonies and rites.
So this seems kind of like a combination of the first and seventh rays, maybe. It has willpower and ceremonies and rites, which I think correspond with first and seventh.
Yes. I do not understand very much when she's saying this jhana is again. Well, I find it quite complex, to be honest with you. But when she's saying the jhana is again one of the forms of the Akasha, have they talked before about another forms of Akasha, or what do you think she's meaning with this?
That's a good question. In this book, I don't think she did talk about Akasha anywhere else. I could be wrong. But Akasha is, I mean, there's the Akashic record, right? Which is,
Yes.
so we know what that is. But Akasha itself, is that in the, I'm not even sure which plane of existence that's in. Is the physical, astral, or mental?
Yes, I am also. I'm not sure. I think I'm not sure if the Akasha records is something that operates in all the levels as a multi-level, also kind of a memory accounting world. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe is this what you are saying? Which world Akasha is? Maybe when she's saying the jhana is again one of the forms.
Mhm.
So yeah, it may be that it's referring also to this idea of the knowledge. It's quite confusing. If I have to be honest, it will be
I agree.
interesting to see if some friends can help, or maybe we can get some more information on this regard.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty sparse on what this even really is. So maybe the next kind of esoteric knowledge. I read this one. So this is the second one at 4. It says, Maya Vidya, the great knowledge, the magic of the Kabbalists and of the Tantrika worship, often sorcery of the worst description. And 3, Guya Vidya, this being the third kind of knowledge of the mystic powers residing in sound, hence in the mantras, chanted prayers or incantations, and depending on the rhythm and melody used. In other words, a magical performance based on knowledge of the forces of nature and their correlation. So I guess this makes it apparent that these esoteric sciences can be used for good or bad. So they're not inherently good. They're just tools.
Completely. And I think, well, it's funny. I finished a little novel, um, esoteric novel, from Quest Editions, which was based in a real story in the north of Spain and the Pyrenees, and it was related with some rituals and apparitions, and some phenomena that were performed in some Rosicrucians and old Kabbalistic groups. And they were talking, we are not, I think it's something for me, I'm not that close to that ritualistic approach. But it seems that in this book, they were talking about how through the rituals, they had some procedures, and it was through the sounds also that everybody, they would open the portals. So that's when the real people were having experiences on astral and other. So I know, well, and we know that, of course, from Hindu tradition of the mantras, no, and the power of certain words. But I think this is something, if I have to tell you the truth, I don't know personally anybody who is into doing this kind of practice any longer.
Mhm. Yeah, no, same here. Except for the theosophical mantras that people recommend, I don't know anything like this, which is probably good. I mean, just considering the state of the world, if people were doing this, it'd probably be black magic than white. But I do think it's
Yes.
interesting that something as physical as sounds, I mean, we know it's caused by vibrations in, air or whatever that substance is, correlates to deep spiritual realities as well. I don't know. To me, it makes this physical world feel more connected with something deeper, that this is how it works, even though I don't understand it yet.
Completely. And I think, well, yeah, I think actually, um, everything it's vibrating, no, on a certain um, well, different frequencies. Supposedly we are all emanating this. So I guess there is a sensitivity, there is a channel, of people who could master, or as you develop more and more subtle sensitivity, and of course a deeper understanding. But it makes sense, like this vibration, it's like a vehicle, no? Because everything is on this vibrating. So in a sense, um,
Yeah, even things that at first I wouldn't expect vibrate, like the physical molecules in our bodies, atoms that I think to science look identical right now, can, from an occult perspective, be vibrating at different frequencies. And as we as people think along, say, more spiritual lines, even the physical atoms in our body get swapped out with these more spiritual kind of physical matter. And from there at the very bottom, our physical bodies, all the way up to our mental bodies, I think as we work, it changes their constitution, their vibration in that way, which I find interesting.
totally. Yeah, and it's interesting because mm, I think we are not sometimes conscious of this, what you are saying, of that there is a real physical transformation,
Yeah,
and
yeah, I forget
our
it all the time.
completely. And I don't know, Mahapitia, um, the great knowledge, the magic of the Kabbalist, of the Tantrika worship. Uh, I For this part, I don't know. I would say that we have a great knowledge in, in the DS, but of course it's from my ignorance. um, that I don't know. What do you think? Do you think here she's referring to maybe a whole compilation of
Yeah,
the, I don't know, of maybe a mix of astrology, mathematical, a sorcery of the worst description.
I think you're right. It's probably more scientific occult knowledge like mathematics, astrology, and yeah, she doesn't give us a lot to go off here.
I yeah, it seems it's something that she knows, but exactly is not. Yeah, compared to other texts and these where the things get explained again, and I think this is kind of a little of summarizing, and it seems a little of a warning more than an invitation, the way she's putting it.
That's true. Yeah, so maybe my vidya is more along the lines of almost intellectual. It's these patterns in nature, and if you understand these patterns, you can do what, to our lower perspective, seems like magic. And then maybe Guya Vidya, that third kind, is more along the lines of, because she, at the very bottom, she says a magical performance based on knowledge of the forces of nature and their correlation. Maybe
Yes,
that's more along the lines of working with elementals and these semi-conscious entities that respond to sound. I don't know. So it seems like maybe.
it's funny because when we were in the when we had the gathering the last year with Kurt Leland, no, and he was kind of trying um, to reawake to bring back this idea of the third objective uh, of the society about waking up the awakening the latent powers and in human beings. And then he was kind of saying, because he had this clairvoyance abilities since he was a teenager, and sensitivity and this, that even when he started, he had a lot of he had to deal also with this thing of the TS was not very open, no, which is normal because they need to verify all these things, and it's not. But he was saying that there has been a tendency also in these last generations of losing this kind of thing, I think probably because it is true that all of these things can develop these psychic powers, which may become quite of a problem and a distraction, no? And at the same time, uh, I don't think I think it's important and it's necessary to have a certain knowledge on this, not because of wanting that power, but also not to be afraid. And if anybody during their practices, I don't know, small things may happen or not, I think it's something interesting to. Now I'm reading this and I'm realizing it's something that um, would be important to rescue and to learn back, no? So actually, there are several people that come to the TS because they have some kind of these experiences and they get no answers anywhere. And they come to the TS because there is a recognition that that can happen within a logical frame, no? They are not crazy, this is happening. But then I think at least me, and I think the newer generations, we are not, for me, I feel myself, I wouldn't be trained enough to help somebody who has experiences on, you know, um, what it means. So I'm not saying we should go for sorcery. I'm also saying that we shouldn't be afraid, and we should maybe try to, I don't know, understand more what this type of vidya she's saying.
Yeah, yeah, that's a logical way to look at it, and it gives a reason to study these things because, like you're saying, it's one, just useful to know that this exists, and two, it can be service for the people who are naturally, for whatever reason in their past, open to these kind of experiences. And maybe worst case scenario, we don't understand this at all, but we could point them to someone who does. We see the signs that
Yes,
someone's experiencing these things, we point them to Kurt Lehman, and that's serious service.
that's serious service. And that, yeah, yes. And one needs to be also brave, because I think the world is becoming so much more and more and more materialistic and logic and rationalist. So all these things suddenly become, any of these manifestations, they are very easily framed into
They're going crazy.
craziness
Yep.
or these kind of things, And then in the other hand, and this is something how can I say, I don't think on this on daily basis, otherwise we wouldn't live, no? But it is true that the same we have the white fraternity, you have what they call it the brothers of the in the dark side, which are necessary for evolution. There are people that access this kind of powers. Actually, I'm reading right now Introduction to Yoga by Annie Besant, and then she's talking about that the yoga is not a moralist path. The Vidya is not only accessible for the people who have only good heart and this intention. It is a neutral, it's a science, it's how the world is, how it works and how you access and how so she was saying how you had this you have the Kaivalaya for the people, for the white yogis that have a motivation of service, fraternity and unit, but you have also the Kaivalaya, she was calling it Avicii, for the other black yogis, which have more of a interest of power, no? And she was talking about this Ramayana. You have Ravana. It's a character in the Indian epic Ramayana who exactly, personifies this. He was a very, very good yogi. He performed all of this. He acquired all this knowledge. He was this, and he was giving bones, powers, no? And then his choice was to be indestructible for all men and to be more powerful than everybody. He was given that also, um, because somehow this is not, the Vidya is not discriminating. It's not a moralist thing, But of course, it's very important, the moral, how you.
Yeah, there's a novel that Mabel Collins wrote. She's the same woman that wrote Light on the Path, and The Blossom and the Fruit was the name of it. And I think the subtitle of the book was The Story of a Black Magician or something like that.
Mhm.
And it was pretty interesting. It's the story of a black magician who, throughout her lifetime, slowly learned what she was doing and like all of the horrible things she had to go through to correct that. And yeah, it's good at illustrating both the point that you're making that uh, these things can be used for good or bad, and also that even I think these bad people that are on the selfish path, they will eventually get turned back around, and it's going to hurt, but they'll be stronger for it.
You have to completely. And it just seems like, I think in nowadays, I don't know, you may correct me, but sometimes um, I was thinking because it feels like these people are shameless and less afraid to go and start doing all of this, no? Um, and this is something I open in and I don't know at all, but when you hear about also all this, the way the material world is managed and all these big circles of power and the way, for example, the Masonic order, some part of it's been gone, I mean, gone not through the virtuous, far from the virtuous side, no? But I mean, these things are real. Like it's difficult to think. Of course, they won't say, but I feel that I am sure that these things are happening and are real, no? And I think we, in the other side, I think one of the powers of our unions and even at least with the intention and this, we need to realize that we are we also need to be, on a certain sense, warriors of that white side, no? I don't know how to say it. Like, it feels sometimes that we are more afraid to do things or to, learn, because it is true that, of course, there is a danger in all these things. But also there's been a lot of, fear put by Catholic Church and this, and demon practices and this demon, and I don't know. And sometimes it feels like there has been a narrative created also in the different spiritual approaches, which, the line between being aware and not being, how do you say, sorry, selfish and wanting that and thirsty with that, that line between, and the other between being afraid of not doing because of, or I don't know. I think there is, in our generation, that is something like we shouldn't be afraid maybe of saying, hey, let us all together to try to become all together a little white magicians. I don't know if I am making.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, it makes sense, and I agree. Yeah, like I think it's a beautiful thing to imagine that we are outposts of the masters who are essentially these white magicians, and that through us they're helping the world. Uh, there's this idea that the masters, these highly evolved people, they don't like to come down into the world where we are because, to put it in a rough way, it messes up their energy. Um, but we're already here and we're not that evolved yet, so that it doesn't affect us that much. But what they can do is send their energy through us as outposts, and we become like little radio transceivers, and we help in a way that they otherwise couldn't. And yeah, so I agree with what you're saying that we shouldn't be
yes,
afraid to see ourselves as on this other
and
side.
and but I like very much when you were saying about this radio, and that we channel, I think I think that key is very, very, very important. One, of course, yeah, the motivation we are saying, but the second, how, okay, you have that motivation, but then how do you approach the matter, no? And I think for me, it's very inspiring that thing that you say about, really, the idea is not, okay, we are waiting this manifestation, or it's our only focus is to clean the channel, no? And then we are very lucky also to have all of us to support us on these different experiences. Mm.
Yeah, yeah, and I struggle a lot, I think, to remember that because I think the way that this works in the real world is through an effort of will. Like,
Yes.
I'm going to be this radio. This is what I'm going to do. And if you have that intention and it's strong enough and you don't forget, it just happens. Uh, because that at that point you're in touch with Booty or the spiritual nature, and it makes things happen. But I struggle a lot with just remembering that, and then in my daily life, like, probably it's not as effective as it could be.
Yes. Yeah, yes, completely. Because I mean, at the same time, we have to become that, but with what we have. And for example, in this book again, I'm mentioning again on the yoga, this yoga path, which she literally says we have to kill the mental activity, And I understand the context when she's saying this, no, but the thing is, we need to, you know, I think that struggle is because we need to bridge that thing with what we are simply as humans in the point where we are, no? What we are feeling, what is causing us our pains, and what is it is difficult to really make. I understand you totally, to maybe act and say, okay, this is really temporal. This is the vehicles passing. It's very difficult not to feel or not to suffer or not to this not identifying ourselves with the things which our material context and our personalities. It's really, really difficult. Like one can get the abstraction on the meditation of this idea of the channel, no? But I think it's also very nice this question to bridge that Pablo Sender was saying this, but many people like, what would a master do in this situation? You know, to try to bring us from that specific moment of that to that channel feeling, no?
Yeah.
Because we have to constantly, it's a constant thing, you know.
Yeah, and what you're saying reminds me of I've been studying a book by Annie Besant lately too, The Ancient Wisdom. I would read that every day
Yes.
for a couple of weeks. And she mentions that in the beginning, when we try to do something new, because we have all this matter in us, in our various mental, emotional, physical bodies that vibrates at a certain rate. In the beginning, as we try to do something like be a channel of these masters, we're not going to see any progress for a while at all. And it's going to seem like we're doing nothing. But at the same time, she says that this act of just trying to do it exactly where we're at, where it seems like nothing's happening, in and of itself starts changing that matter within us, even though we don't see any results for a long time. And just the act of trying eventually makes it so the matter within us changes and it becomes, an easy thing or a skillful thing for us to do. And I feel like that ties into what you're saying about how there's this reality of where we're at right now is not there, but we still got to try.
Yes. We need to try. The thing is that in the moment this thing is being, somehow we have encountered this thing in our life, okay, for whatever reasons. I mean, we have encountered theosophy, we have encountered any of this knowledge. We can struggle to get there, we can that, but trying to turn our back to that and now come back to a life where, well, a part that we don't want, but even if that, I don't think it's possible. It's like you have already got a little thing, there is a little spark that is telling you this is not just what it is. And for any reason of our past lives, and but we right now have have encountered this kind of knowledge. So that's something also that we need to tell ourselves. It's
Kind of like the time is now. You're aware of it. You can't go back.
the time is now. We can't go back. If it's very difficult, fine. Let's breathe. Let's go for it. But once you turn that thing of there is something there, there is no way back. To say, okay, let's
Yep.
forget. This is very complicated. You can't,
We've
you know.
we've eaten the
So
fruit.
it's so we are there, no. And just one thing only for this. Um, Something very beautiful I learned. I was in Tirumvaramalai now in Ramana Maharshi. This. And there's a very devotion, and I met a very nice lady, a yogi there. She was very, 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 very sweet person, and I talked to her about the objectives of the Theosophical Society, and she said that she would add a fourth one, which is devotion, no. And then I'm like, yeah, but that is some people yes, some people no. I was kind of debating on this on here, and at certain point she told me something very beautiful, which is like, look, the amazing thing of devotion is that it doesn't matter that you don't think on these masters, or you don't think on all these souls that are coming back to help, but they will think of you. These people have these masters. We don't talk about that much, but these masters are masters of love. So something that it's also, I think, very encouraging, and for me helps me a lot, is that even when we forget because of our identifications about this path or about them, they don't forget about us. They
It's
will
true.
never stop caring. They will never stop loving, no? So I think that's something that we also need to seek, no? When we are trying to learn, coming back to this knowledge, to this way of helping, we face the difficulties, no? And we always need to, for me, it was very nice to hear that, a little, like we are not alone, for real. And yes, and despite we can forget about that, we can get far from that. that doesn't forget about us, that doesn't get far from us, you know?
Mhm.
So
Yeah, something that helps me in terms of devotion, which is something I'm not very good at yet, is this idea that devotion is the natural result of an emotional body that's advanced. And if I don't feel a lot of devotion right now, it's because I'm stuck in lower levels still. Um, Kind of related to this Guya Vidya, I think, where it's about sound.
yes,
Mentally in my head, when I meditate, I like doing the Gayatri mantra. Uh,
yes,
it's one that Pablo turned me on to in one of his classes. And I don't know, it's the only mantra I've used where I feel like it's actually doing something, like actively. But a part of it is, it's like what, Vasuvaha, which is the physical body, the emotional body, and the mental body. You say these out loud. And for devotion, when I say Bhuva in my head, which is the emotional body, I imagine at the same time what it corresponds to, which is the Buddhic body. Because there's this idea that the seven principles of man, the first and the seventh correlate, the second and the sixth correlate, and the third and the fifth correlate. So the second is the emotional, and the sixth is the Buddhic. So
mm-hmm,
if you can train your emotional body to look for the Buddhic body, what you're doing is
mm-hmm.
developing devotion, and you're training your emotional body to be an effective instrument of that. And I don't know, in meditation, when I'm silent and I'm outside the real world, I can feel that devotion a little bit, and it's a very beautiful thing. I think the trick is just remembering that when I'm in the real world. But hopefully, I explained that in
Completely,
a way that makes sense.
completely. And I think when you are in that state, this here is talking about the rhythm and and the melodies, you know. Um, but of course, I'm sure when they are working on this, you need to have this state of mind that you are describing right now. Like I'm sure it's not merely the sounds. I'm sure it's the whole body will emitting some sounds, but that state of mind, that elevated this will for sure will have to be there. Otherwise, how can you vibrate how can the vibrations elevate? How can this portal or wherever things open and also I think also there is one more thing in what you are saying on the emotion and the body, and is that for me it gives a certain warmness, give us a warmth and give us a strength, you know, gives something inside. It's a very subtle thing, it's not a strength in terms of like how strong you speak to people maybe or this, but it's more of our resilience, and a feeling of being supported, you know, a feeling of and I think this presence is it's something very nice, powerful.
So that reminded me of trying to find it. Every day I have a few quotes that I try to remind myself of, and one of them that I've been uh, studying lately, I got a little app on my phone, so like I click it and then it comes up again the next day. And one of these sentences that I try to focus on each day is it's in this attitude of trust and dependence lies the great secret of developing love towards him. And that's, I think, for the same reason of developing devotion, I've been trying to remind myself of that everything that's happened in my life, it's been orchestrated by a power greater than me. And I'm alive and doing these things now, not because of any merit on my own, but because I exist within something greater than me. And trying to remember that, I think, helps me develop, like it says, love towards that thing.
Completely. Could you share some of this on the chat or with me?
Yeah.
I like that call very much. Thank you so much, Seth, for sharing this. Um, we go for the next.
Okay. 4.1.
I
Atmavidya.
go for it.
Okay. A
No,
term
no,
which
you
is
read it.
translated simply knowledge of the soul, true wisdom by the Orientalists, but which means far more. 4.2. This is the only kind of occultism that any theosophist who admires light on the path and who would be wise and unselfish ought to strive after. All the rest is some branch of the occult sciences, which makes sense, I think.
Yes, yes. It's yes. It's what we were kind of talking about, that these other things are related to some phenomena, some
Yeah, it reminds me of
uh,
a quote from Light on the Path. It goes something like, the power that the disciple seeks is that which shall make him appear as nothing in the eyes of man. Because this Atma Vidya, which is what Light on the Path is all about, it does give you power, but not a power to, that lends itself to ambition
totally,
of getting things done of what all these people in the world admire, but it's a power of helping people unselfishly, which no one thinks is a threat, and they'll see you as nothing in the eyes of the world.
totally. I think yes, yes. I mean, I don't want to say, of course, I will never, how you say, go against what Blavatsky is saying. No, no way who I am. But I have this question, like, why are these other things there then? In the sense, like, um, I understand. I really think this. We talked to this in the last meeting about the context of how when they went to India, it was all of this spiritists movement in Europe, and actually this book I was reading about this Rosicrucian portals and this and the things, they were saying how dangerous they had been sometimes. In the other hand, it was very funny because it was related with this, in the Catholic Church you have these virgins. Like my name, for example, is Fatima, and it's the Lady of Fatima, who is supposed to appear in Portugal, and it's funny because all of these weird things happening and gifts given and this, and they were related with some of these rituals, apparently. So let's say that certain things on a place, the place has to be already, they choose, no, a place geographically with a specific magnetism and this, and they perform certain things, and apparently this happens, and it is true that there are stories about how these places, many people get healed, many people. So I don't know if all the people that have approached those other paths were having really always bad intentions. I It's something I'm opening here. I'm questioning. But in the other hand, I think what they are telling us, in a sense, is to kind of leave that aside and go directly for the higher form of connection. And no need to make these portals. Maybe it's a question of having a direct realization of the thing. And I think she's telling us to go there. My questioning was just because I think just that there have been some people that may have not been doing those other things for only bad reasons. No?
It makes me think of perspective for some reason. I feel like Atmavidya is the one of these four esoteric sciences that actively changes a person's perspective. And the
Yes,
other three can be done from the same perspective where we are right now without trying to
this is
change it.
this is true.
So even if we go back to that example of a black magician actively working for selfish ends, if he for because the universe orchestrates it this way or by his own choice, begins to work on Atmavidya, the knowledge of the soul, he'll start to see for himself, I think, that these selfish things he's doing are going nowhere. And he'll still have these other powers, but now he begins to use them for a higher reason.
Yes.
Should we go to the next one?
Let's go for it. So I'm turning on my light. Excuse me. 1 second. I'm coming. 37. Alchemy, astrology, occult psychology, chiromancy exist in nature, and the exact sciences, perhaps so-called, because they are found in this age of paradoxical philosophies, the reverse, have already discovered not a few of the secret of the above arts. But 38. But clairvoyance, symbolized in India as the eye of Shiva, called in Japan infinite vision, is not hypnotism, the illegitimate son of mesmerism, and is not to be acquired by such arts. All the others may be mastered and results obtained, whether good or bad or indifferent. But Atma Vidya sets a small value on them.
So I think she's saying that clairvoyance is synonymous with Atmavidya, right? Because it's one of these things that can't be attained by the others.
Yes. On the others, a ver, but clairvoyance symbolized in India. Master. Yes, I don't really understand this 38. All the others may be mastered and result obtained, whether good, sets a small value on them.
I think she's saying that clairvoyance
Yes,
can only really be acquired by Atmavidya. And clairvoyance is the act of seeing things. But I think in this perspective, she's taken it as the rising perspective of seeing things as they are can only be
yes,
acquired by Atmavidya. Whereas all these other powers, like, astrology, chiromancy, alchemy, can be attained with other things.
yes. I think so. I'm just not understanding when she's saying alchemy, astrology. Okay. So when she's saying the exact sciences, she's talking about science as materialistic science, no? And in the 37, and exact sciences have already discovered not a few of the secret of the above arts. So I think she's saying that materialistic science, not occult sciences, have already found through that some of these other aspects. But clairvoyance, as you are saying, it's something different, and that only starts when a true path starts. I'm not sure, because I have an idea that, well, would be interesting to understand what she's meaning by clairvoyance, because if by clairvoyance is being sensitive only of the astral world, I feel that there are some of these other practices some people may, but I think she's when she's saying the eye of Shiva and the infinite vision, she's talking something, as
Something
you are
deeper.
saying. Yes. something deeper.
Yeah, and I agree with you because clairvoyance, you're right, can be the power of seeing the astral, which is not a very important thing. And that's exactly
Mm.
what I was thinking too. That she mentioned these other traditions, and infinite vision sounds like something where you're trying to see the soul. I guess that's what I was going off of.
Yes, sounds much more profound and mhm.
Should we go to the next?
Let's go.
Okay, 39. Atmavidya includes them all, and may even use them occasionally, but it does so after purifying them of their dross for beneficent purposes, and taking care to deprive them of every element of selfish motive.
Mm.
40. Let us explain. Any man or woman can set himself or herself to study one or all of the above specified occult arts without any great previous preparation, and even without adopting, any too restraining mode of life. Which is kind of what we've been talking about, right?
Yes. Yes, yes. I think it's what you were also mentioning before, like in one thing you transform yourself, and in the other you are not transforming yourself. You are acquiring a skill or a knowledge, but it's not implying what she's saying, a purification, a transformation of yourself, and I think and that's why it's very nice when the other day Tim Boyd gave this talk in Paris. I recommend you very much. It was shared by Krista on the group, no?
Mhm.
And for example, he was reviewing this idea of the study, the different objectives of the TS, and that um, like there is a transformation of the mind. And our idea of studying in the TS is not to acquire a series of things, even a knowledge that can allow us to make any alchemy or performance. It's an study which is making our mind become on a certain state. It helps on a big thing is a purification of the mind, and I think that is why the other things. I'm just making that remark because we study a lot on the TS, and maybe it sounds like you can study also, but again there is these two sides. Is that part where it is you acquiring these things, so in a way you are making more solid that idea of your identifications, of your you-ness, your I-ness with the lower vehicles and all of things. And in the other, it's a very different thing because it's the I-ness dissolves. There is a transformation. It's this channeling thing that you were saying. Um, but it's not even like I am a channel. It's like, there's not that even that premise, no? So I think there is this big difference. Now I'm getting to understand a little more. I think a little what she's trying to say.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a beautiful thing to look back on our lives over, decades or years and see how just through normal life, all of us, our perspective changes and what we think that we are changes. And I don't know, that to me is kind of like fuel to want to keep going deeper. Because I can see how as a kid, what I thought that I was is something completely different from what I think now that I am. And I kind of see that the deeper that I go with this, the I don't know, you can't really predict where you're going to end up. And I can feel it that although I don't see things as they are yet, I see things more clearly than I used to, at least. And I don't know, that motivates me to want to keep seeing it more and more clearly. I don't know. I'm not explaining this very well, so I'm going to stop.
No, no,
But
no. You are very well. You are very well because, of course. of course, there is at least that thing keeps us moving. A little glimpses. I think you are explaining very well about the. I think clarity is actually a beautiful word, and that's one of the things we all strive for to have a clarity.
Yeah, it makes me fall in love with this idea of occultism when looked at from the perspective of trying to always see things from a higher perspective. I don't know, it makes everything else seem less important than that.
It does.
Because even if our motivation in doing all of this is to help the people around us, only by seeing things in a higher perspective through occultism can we help them in a way that's going to be truly helpful. I don't know. And it
Totally.
makes me, yeah, I want to devote everything I have to this thing.
Totally. That's the yes. That's a thing, and then it's something related to what you were saying before about the will and about the degree of compromise. I think there is very much of a when you say the clarity and there is a moment of an internal click, that we may be clicking and clicking, clicking and clicking until hopefully one day the click is done and fixed. In the sense of living a line. And you were saying, I would like to give everything for this, and mm, what you were saying before about maybe that suffering finishing one day in that way, where we are not having this hesitation of suddenly, all these other things may happen to us in our personal lives or whatever, and they bring us down or they make us sad. So in one hand, there is the outer activities that um, how do we dedicate ourselves? But there is that inner click in which there is like a real inner surrender. I am not there 100%. I wished. I wished I could say I 100% live for a cause and all the rest is no longer affecting anymore, and I am able to take everything as part of the proofs, and I I can bring that knowledge in the moments which when one gets far and it helps you to go. Just I just pray. I'm looking forward also by doing that exercise that there will be this moment of that the certainty, the click will be solidly, and will never leave. I will 24 hours. I would be able to,
I would
just
also
see
pray for that
uh,
click.
knock through that. That would be amazing. Yeah, but for the moment we have to, yeah, keep on going there, and it's true because at least when we are able to do that, we get all these moments of and these these clarities and this strength, and everything makes so much sense, and we have to strive to get that properly rooted, and at least work at as much as we can in this life, and then maybe the next life we wake up with something already. Let's see
There,
how we can go.
there's this idea in the Jewish Old Testament, I think, the Bible essentially, I don't know the quotes for it, but there's this idea that if anyone looks into the eyes of God, they disappear, burned alive. And I don't know, I like to imagine that I do that because it's worth it. I think what they're getting at is the idea of what we think we are now burns away, and we're left with what we really are when we're able to look into the eyes of God. And I don't know. I think that's That's what's driving
Totally.
what you're saying. Did you want to say anything else before we go to the last 2 minutes of silence?
Wow, the time has passed.
Mhm.
Um,
Going by fast.
so yes. Okay. So no, I'm just I don't know. Maybe just this thing you were saying about looking in the eyes of God. I like it very much, and maybe just between us to say that those eyes are always looking at us. No. So we should always even in the most difficult moments we always can hold there, you know. And I think that trust and that love, it's also, a nicer way to make all of this work on not just pure work of, okay, purifying means I do this, I don't that, I don't that. It's, yes, there are moments where the will have to work and that some things may be difficult to live, and but there is a love motivation for that, and there is this union feeling to cultivate, and I think that is something that can also make everything a little more sweeter.
Very good. Closing
Thank you so
remarks.
much, Seth.
All right. Minutes of silence.